It was not only Naruto who could not take his eyes off him, even little Eri was gawking at him. And that was because All Might's muscle form had run out of time right before he called the taxi. His muscular physique, which looked as if it had been taken out of a comic book, was nowhere to be seen now. Instead, what could be described as a living skeleton stood in his place.
In spite of still wearing his hero uniform, the taxi driver didn't spare All Might a second glance. In his eyes, he looked just like a lame fan doing a sorry cosplay of the real hero, All Might. If Naruto and Eri had not seen him turn into his current form with their own eyes, they would have not believed it either. 1 hour later, the taxi stopped in front of the main police station of Musudafu City. With the little girl cradled in his arms, Naruto stepped out of the car gently so as to not wake her up. His face involuntarily broke into a smile when he saw how she was hugging one of his fluffy fox tails to her chest while sleeping.
Nonetheless, despite Naruto wishing for her to continue sleeping, the city's noise in the afternoon woke her up. He chuckled when he saw her burying her face into the fur of his tail to hide from the light. "My full name is Eri," the girl insisted, even as the two adults in the room were looking at her questionably for not saying her surname. Next to All Might, a tall and well-built man in his late 30s, had a pondering expression on his face as he turned to look at his computer. "You said you were 6 years old, yes?" The man asked her again for confirmation, and Eri nodded, all the while trying to hide behind Naruto's tails. "Don't worry, Eri-chan. Detective Tsukauchi is one of my closest friends. You can trust him," All Might said, trying to reassure the little girl. A few moments later, the detective shook his head and said,
"It's no use, I can't find her in our database. I checked all the births from 5, 6, and 7 years ago, and there are only around 60 girls with the name Eri. But our Eri-chan doesn't match their description at all, since they all have parents and they are registered either in kindergarten or in the first year of elementary school. For all I know, she's a ghost. We have nothing on her."
It wasn't only Eri that was anxious. Naruto was growing a little restless too. "This might be for the best," All Might unexpectedly said after a while. "What do you mean by that, Sensei?" Naruto asked quickly. "If she's not registered, that means we don't necessarily need to go about it through the official channels." "I'm still a police officer, you know," the detective said, his exasperation increasing when he saw All Might starting to laugh awkwardly. Turning towards Naruto, All Might said,
"There is a chance that Eri-chan could be allowed to stay with you without going public to the HPSC with your ability. But to make that happen, your parents need to be on board with the idea too." His words reminded Naruto of the elephant in the room. Even if they could work around the law and prevent his adamantine ceiling chains from being exposed to the public, the fact was that if his parents did not agree to take Eri in, it was all for naught.
"But if they agree to take Eri-chan in, that means that Dad will find out about Mom's quirk too. How would he feel knowing that his wife had been hiding such an important fact about her for so many years? Would his trust in her be shattered? Wouldn't their relationship be affected? Other couples have divorced for lesser reasons. Before we make further plans, you should talk it over with your parents first and get a concrete answer," All Might said. "I will arrange a car to escort you home, and I will assign 2 officers to keep a watch on your home until we get to the bottom of this. Normally, I would insist on Eri-chan staying here, and I would call the Child Protection Agency. But I understand this is a sensitive case. They are not capable of taking care of Eri," the detective also said.
While Naruto, All Might and Eri were riding the taxi on their way back to Musudafu City, the freshmen participating in the UA High's sports festival were beating the brakes off each other. Furthermore, due to the measures that each team had taken at the start to safeguard their wooden poles, it was not realistic to topple them without destroying them while there were so many other opponents attacking them at once. Unlike the traditional bow taoshi where fighting was prohibited, in this current game, they could be taken out in one shot.
Eventually, the time limit of 5 minutes passed without any of the teams managing to achieve their goal, toppling off the opponent's pole. Watching the field that looked as if it had been carpet bombed by drones, the UA principal, Nezu, and the rest of the organizers of the sports festival didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The second stage of the festival had been a big failure because they had failed to anticipate the students' thirst for battle and recognition. What had originally been intended to test out the students' strategic skills and ability to perform as a team had been reduced to a mere barbaric battle royale within seconds from the start of the game. At least the crowd appears to be in high spirits, was the only thing Nezu could tell himself as consolation. Originally, the plan was for the winning team of the Taoshi game to proceed to the final stage, where they would face each other in individual battles, tournament style. But with neither team winning, and with so few students left uninjured on the field, they could not restart the game and make them go at it again to decide a winner. The organizers of the event decided to proceed with the final stage, the fighting tournament. I survived by the skin of my teeth, Izuku thought in dismay. If it wasn't for Todoroki-san, I wouldn't have made it out of the second event. He knew. He had always known that he was fighting an uphill battle, that he would always be at a disadvantage against people that had quirks. Todoroki Shadow's performance, in particular, left a deep impression on Izuku.
Unfortunately, there were not enough survivors left to participate in the tournament, but there were quite a few students that were thrown out of bounds at the early stage of the Taoshi game and were injured too seriously to continue, so they selected 3 of them to advance to the next stage.
After drawing the lots, the tournament brackets appeared as such. 1. Todoroki Shadow vs. Mezo Shoji. 2. Ibara Shiozaki vs. Setsuna Tokichi. 3. Tenya Dudiya vs. Midoriya Izuku. 4. Katsuki Bakugo vs. Hitoshi Shinso. 5. Fumikage Tokoyami vs. Tetsu. 6. Naito Monoma vs. Kojiro Bondo. 7. Aijiro Kirishima vs. Mashiro Ojiro. 8. Shihei Korairo vs. Yue Kodai. Watching the battle between Todoroki Shadow and Meso Shoji, Izuku was writing furiously in his notebook. The sight of a muscular teen nerding out and muttering to himself as if he was entranced drew out a few looks from the people around him. At the same time, he was trying to think of plans that would work if he ever had to fight them. Mezo Shoji's quirk doesn't look as flashy, and may not seem as powerful as that of Todoroki Shadow, but it can be very versatile and unpredictable, Izuku muttered at the scene in front of him. Taking advantage of the crowd control ability of his quirk, Todoroki froze the entire floor of the tournament stage, trapping Mezo's legs in ice. 2. I suggest you give up. I don't want to hurt you unnecessarily, Matt. Todoroki began to say confidently, but an unexpected punch smashed into his face with such power that he went flying. Although Mezo Shoji's legs got trapped, his quirk, Dupli Arms, allowed him to multiply any part of his body through his arms, effectively giving him the ability to elongate his arms to impressive distances. And that was not all. Any organ or body part that he duplicated through his quirk would become much stronger than the original. His punch felt to Todoroki as if he had been hit by a car. But Shoji was not done yet. Even though his legs were still trapped in ice, his tentacles sprouted even more arms and threw a powerful blow at Todoroki again.
Although he had almost been knocked out cold by that punch, Todoroki's fighting spirit burned even brighter than before. A massive wall of ice grew out in front of him just in time to shield him from Shoji's heavy punch, and, in the next moment, he stomped his foot powerfully against the ground. The spectators turned silent with awe as a massive tsunami of ice suddenly froze half the stadium to bits.
With the first match coming to an end so quickly, the reality of the situation finally dawned on Izuku. There was only one match left until it was his turn.
His anxiety kicked in and he started biting his nails as he read the pages of his notebook that were filled with information that he had managed to dig up on his opponent, Tanaya Iida. So absorbed in his notebook he had been that he didn't even see when the second match between Ibara Shiozaki and Setsuna Tokage start or finish. It was only when he heard his name being called that he finally came back to his senses.
From the Hero Course, Tenya Duida. Verses from General Studies, Midoriya Izuku.
Coming down from the stands and walking onto the stage, Izuku felt shivers traveling down his spine.
Man up, me. This is my opportunity. This is my only chance to show everyone that I belong in the Hero Course. He was scared shitless to be alone on the stage in front of so many people, with the whole country watching his every move. However, his inhuman training, and the grueling beatings he had put his body through over the past year, had not been in vain. Moreover, the incident where he had defeated the pink-skinned giant villain and saved the family that was being held hostage had improved his self-confidence. He was not the same timid, weak, and scrawny boy from 1 year ago. My name is Tenya Duida. Please treat me fairly, Tuda said, and bowed stiffly. Present? Mick's voice resounded in the background. With his engine quirk, Tuda-kun showed he is one of the fastest participants in this tournament. As for his opponent from General Studies, his quirk, wait, does he even have a quirk? I have not seen him use any special abilities, Aizawa replied to him. He has won the first event by outsmarting his competition, and survived in the second by avoiding frontal one-on-one fight. But Izuku tuned out all their voices. His eyes looking at Tenya piercingly, he brought his hands up and his elbows close to his body, getting into a fighting stance. Start. The moment that Midnight shouted and flicked her whip, smoke came out of the tubes on Tenya Duida's calves as he broke into a sprint. Fast, Izuku inwardly exclaimed, but Naruto was even faster than that. I can see it. I can see his move. Accurately predicting Tuida's strike, Izuku leaned back, dodging Tenya's wind-stirring kick as if he was in the Matrix. But Tuida was far from done. Accelerating even harder, he turned around and delivered a devastating whirlwind kick.
Out of position and unable to react in time to Iida's superhuman speed, Izuku was unable to dodge. He could only brace himself and take the hit with his guard.
Although Izuku blocked the hit, Tenya's powerful whirlwind kick sent him flying as if he had been hit by a truck. But instead of following up and delivering the final blow, Tuida shouted, "What are you doing? Why are you not using your quirk?"
Standing up with difficulty from the ground, Izuku grimaced as he touched his left arm with his right hand. Iida's kick had snapped his left forearm as if it had been a twig.
Because I don't have a quirk. But I'll show everyone that I don't need a quirk to become a pro hero, Izuku said, his voice strained as he talked through the pain coming from his broken arm. Do you hear yourself? How are you going to do that? It's impossible. Tuida yelled at him in disbelief. Turning toward Midnight, Tenya raised his hand up high and said out loud, "Referee, I request this fight to be stopped. My opponent doesn't have a quirk. I don't want to hurt him any further." Shut up and fight, Izuku suddenly screamed, taking everyone by surprise. You talk as if you have this in the bag, but I'm still standing. I haven't given up. He shouted with so much strength that he was out of breath. As long as I'm still standing, I won't give up. Come, I'm still here. Come at me and fight. His outburst left Tenya speechless. After a few moments, Midnight said, "It is not against the rules for quirkless students to participate, you." But Professor, Tenya Duida began to protest only for Midnight to cut him off. Unless you want to forfeit, the match will proceed until one of you is either incapacitated, thrown out of bounds, or admits defeat. This is final, she said, and pointed her whip at him. Turning towards Izuku, Duida said seriously, "Please remember that I tried to save you from unnecessary pain. You've brought this what? Cut the crap already and fight?" Izuku said unknowingly, taking a page out of Naruto's book and provoking him. Such foul language. It is unbecoming of a WoW. But with a burst of speed that Tuida had not expected from a quirkless person, Izuku charged at him. Tuida barely managed to move his head out of the way, Izuku's fist almost grazing his nose. Izuku felt like kicking himself for his lapse in judgment. I shouldn't have tried headhunting someone as fast as Tenya Duida. It should have been obvious he'd dodge it easily. Realizing his mistake, Naruto's words from a few months ago rang in his mind at that moment. If your opponent doesn't have some physical enhancement quirk, always go for their body, because most people generally expect their opponents to go for their head, so they're always on guard against that. And they're also more used to dodging hits going there. But they can't dodge body hits as easily. More importantly, even if people with regular bodies can train their muscles and learn martial arts, they can't train their internal organs. So no matter how strong they become, if you catch someone with a good body shot, they'll collapse as if they're paralyzed. Let me show you what getting punched in the liver area feels like. Oh, where are you running? Oi, get back here, you coward! You need to feel it on your own skin first to fully appreciate the effectiveness. Rush of anger washed over him at the memory of how Naruto taught him everything, by making him feel the effects of each hit on his own body. But that rush of anger only served to empower him at that moment. Nonetheless, Izuku was not allowed too much time to think, because, after getting over his surprise at his quirkless opponent almost managing to score a hit on him, Toyota started his attack again. With a burst of speed higher than the previous times, his kick found its mark again, and Izuku only managed at the last moment to twist his body and receive the hit with his left shoulder instead of being hit in the head. Even as he was sent tumbling once again, Izuku quickly stood up to his feet. And it was not a moment too soon. A split of a second later, Tenya Toyoda's heel cracked the concrete stage. He followed with yet another high kick, but Izuku dodged it perfectly this time by crouching. Attacking only using his legs had made Toyoda predictable, and Izuku jumped at the chance to finally counterattack. With Toyoda having left himself open, Izuku smashed a heavy punch into his guts. Spittle flew out of Tenya's mouth, and as he doubled over from pain, Izuku's knee rose to smash into his face. But just as Izuku was about to deal the finishing blow, Toyoda's calves were lit up with a blue fire and his body was propelled ahead, tackling Izuku with his head and making him lose his balance. Fighting through the pain from his stomach and his lack of air, Toyoda wrapped his arms around Izuku's waist and forced himself to continue running, intent on pushing his opponent all the way to the edge of the stage and throwing him out of bounds. But Izuku's forearm suddenly snaked under Toyoda's chin and his muscles bulged as he used his entire strength in a desperate attempt to choke him to sleep. But his effort was bound to fail because one hand was not enough to choke someone successfully. His martial arts instructor at the dojo had spent many hours teaching him the basics of grappling. With Toyoda activating his special move, Recipro Burst, even while lacking air and feeling dizzy and faint from the body shot he had eaten, he traversed the stage with Izuku in tow in the blink of an eye. However, right as he was about to push Izuku out, only half a meter was left. Toyoda unexpectedly felt his feet leave the ground.
With a burst of strength uncharacteristic of a normal human, Izuku grabbed Toyoda by the hem of his gym uniform with his still working hand and lifted him in the air before smashing him down over his shoulder with a judo throw that made Kushina stand up from her seat in amazement. Tenya-kun. Izuku distantly heard the boys' classmates crying out in distress when they saw him getting thrown out of bounds, but their shouts were quickly drowned by Present Mike, who screamed at the top of his lungs, his yells filling the stadium.
Oh my, would you look at that? Winner. General Studies Midoriya Izuku. Midnight also said as she flailed her whip around. As Izuku let out a victory cry, much to his surprise, the entire stadium broke into loud cheers. It was in human nature to root for the underdog, and Izuku had been a very pitiful underdog. Quirkless and with one arm broken, literally nobody had expected him to turn around the situation like that.
Seeing the thousands of people in the stands acknowledging him like that, Izuku involuntarily felt his eyes start swimming with tears. He may have grown up both in body and mind due to his grueling training over the past year, but at the core, he was still a sensitive and emotional teenage boy. After all the doubt and suffering he had endured, after his idol putting down his dreams 2 times already, Izuku was finally having his efforts acknowledged. Izuku's emotional reaction to their cheers spurred the crowd even further, and many of the spectators rose from their seats as they clapped their hands for him vigorously.
As the medics carried Izuku out on a stretcher, he had no illusions about his position in the tournament. Although he had won the match, with his broken arm and his energy completely depleted from having tapped into his hysterical strength for the last judo throw. Izuku understood that he would not be able to fight again.
Nevertheless, he had achieved his objective at this sports festival. He had made everyone acknowledge him. He had left a lasting impression on the heroes and professors alike by winning the first event and by beating someone as good as Iida. His hard work and his relentlessness had paid off. He could have not hoped for a better outcome.
And new chapter out. Enjoy. Chapter 17. Coming out. I wonder what kind of mess he's gotten himself into, Kushina said. When has our son ever gotten himself in serious trouble, though? Minato's words were not baseless. Even before Naruto's behavior changed for the better, and he stopped being disrespectful and rebellious, he had never gotten into real trouble. Some scuffles at school and being admonished for being too rowdy were normal for regular boys his age. But other than that, despite not putting effort into studying and often coming home late, he didn't skip school, and he didn't partake in delinquent-like activities. Nonetheless, if the way he was stepping on the gas pedal was anything to go by, Minato seemed worried too. The reason for their current anxiety was the text message they had received only a few minutes after the end of the UA High Sports Festival. Dad, there's something important I need to talk to you and Mom about. It's really, really important. Please come home as soon as you can.
The two of them tried calling Naruto after that, but he did not pick up any of their calls. As parents, while knowing that Naruto had asked them before to call All Might, how could they not be worried after receiving such a text message from their teenage son who had gone alone all the way to Tokyo? His fox ears picking up the screeching sound of tires made by a car abruptly braking, Naruto quickly stood up and went to the entrance door. Startled by his sudden action, Eri jumped up from the sofa and ran after him, grabbing him from his pants from behind.
Don't worry, Eri-chan. I'm sure my parents will like you.
Really? The little girl asked in a hopeful voice.
Really, he said and patted her on the head. Besides, what's not to like about you? You're the cutest girl I've ever seen. Eri looked down shyly, her cheeks slightly pink with embarrassment at his praise. Although he reassured Eri that his parents were going to love her, deep down, Naruto was not any less anxious than her. Even though he was only 15 years old physically, due to having the experience of two lives, Naruto was more mature mentally than his age implied. He understood how difficult was the upcoming discussion with his parents going to be. It was unlike Minato to drive aggressively and go over the speed limit, and he was not the type to brake with a screeching sound either, but he could not help his desire to get home as fast as possible at that moment. Parking roughly in front of the gate of the garage, Minato and Kushina slammed the doors of the car as they got out and rushed towards the entrance door. Just as he was about to grab the doorknob, the entrance door opened and nearly hit him in the face. Naruto! You're okay. Why didn't you pick up the phone? We were so worried, Kushina said and rushed at him, momentarily not knowing whether she wanted to take him in her arms and embrace him or strangle him. She ended up settling for grabbing him by the shoulders and shaking him.
But suddenly, she became as still as a statue. Hidden almost completely by Naruto's three fluffy fox tails, a little girl no older than 6 was clutching at the fabric of his pants with both hands as she looked up anxiously.
Mom, Dad, this is Eri-chan. As Naruto related them the events he had gone through while he had been in Tokyo, Minato and Kushina's faces went through several different expressions. Hearing that a girl as young as her, she was only 6, had been abused to the point where she had decided to run away from home, the two of them could not help being filled with righteous anger. But their anger soon deflated at the sight of the dirty dress she was wearing, and the soiled bandages wrapped around Eri's arms and legs.
Overwhelmed with a feeling of pity, Kushina came to sit on the sofa next to Eri and Naruto and took the little girl in a motherly embrace that left the little girl lost for words. Although she stiffened at the unexpected physical contact with a person that she did not know anything about, a few moments later, Eri melted into Kushina's embrace. With Kushina's motherly instincts taking over like that, the duty of acting like a rational adult fell on Minato's shoulders. As much pity as he felt for the little girl's plight, this was not the kind of matter that could be brushed over with just feelings alone.
But why bring her home, Naruto? Don't misunderstand. It's not that I have something against Arachan in particular. But there are several legal procedures that one has to go through before becoming the guardian of a child. The Child Protection Agency could even get someone to go to prison if they just grabbed a random child from the streets and took them home.
Naruto made a difficult expression, not knowing exactly how to break it to him. He scratched the back of his head furiously for a moment and blew out a long sigh before addressing his mother.
Mom, I think I have to come out with the secret. Kushina's and Minato's eyes became as wide as saucers, though for different reasons. But before Kushina could reply, Minato stood up and came to Naruto. Putting a hand on his shoulder, Minato said,
"That's what you were worried about. Listen to me, Naruto. No matter what, you are still my son. Being gay doesn't change that. I don't."
"Dad, I'm not gay," Naruto shouted in indignation at his misunderstanding. In spite of what was about to happen, Naruto divulging a secret that she had kept away from her husband for so many years, Kushina could not keep in her laughter at the unexpected hilarity of the situation. Maybe it was because of how nervous she was in regards to what was about to come, but Kushina could not stop laughing for a good while. But I thought, Minato began to say in confusion. "No, it's something entirely different. He trailed off, only for Kushina, who had calmed down in the meantime, to say, "You made me a promise, Naruto. Why would you go back on your word now? It's the only way it would make sense for you why Era-chan needs to stay with us."
A momentary silence descended as Naruto looked down at his clasped hands and Kushina chewed on her lower lip with her eyes pinned on the coffee table in front of the sofa. Minato kept switching from looking from one to another as a feeling of irritation slowly seeped in at the thought that his wife and his son had been keeping a secret from him.
But then he palmed his face with a hand and let out a big groan, before saying,
"Just tell me. I promise I won't be mad."
Hearing his father's words, Naruto began to explain the situation in detail. Era-chan has a powerful quirk. Probably the most powerful and most dangerous quirk I've ever seen. It's almost like the power of a god.
This innocent and adorable little girl. Kushina and Minato unknowingly thought at the same time as they turned to look at Eri, who was now sticking as close as humanly possible to Naruto's side and hiding her face behind one of his fluffy fox tails. Her quirk is rewind. She can turn back time on someone's body. I've seen it with my own eyes. She made one of her captors grow younger until he became a toddler and then he disappeared. She made him stop existing.
His parents became speechless.
The Child Protection Agency can't take care of Eri-chan. They can't stop her if her quirk goes out of control. As far as I know, there are only 2 people, maybe 3 that can stop her. One of them is my homeroom teacher, Aizawa-sensei. He can cancel quirks. The other one is the modern hero art teacher, the R-rated hero, Midnight. She could probably put her to sleep. But you can tell neither is exactly the best parent material out there. The last person would be me.
What could you do about it with your quirk? Although it looked like Naruto was going to only talk about himself instead of also revealing that she had a quirk too, Kushina decided that since the cat was out of the bag, she might as well come out in the open too.
Minato's mouth fell open in what seemed to be disbelief at the sight in front of him. 4 golden chains glowing with a bright light unexpectedly tore out through the back of his wife's shirt and flailed slowly in the air around her.
"I'm sorry, Minato," Kushina said guiltily, and looked down, not daring to meet his eyes. "I've been lying to you for years. I'm not quirkless." A silence that one could hear a pin drop was instilled. Seeing that Minato was not interrupting her, she continued speaking, all the while wrenching her fingers. "I've never told anyone about this quirk before. The Hero Association doesn't know about it either. Originally, my plan was to take this secret to the grave with me. I don't understand why all this secrecy," Minato eventually croaked out. Your chains don't look like a terrible quirk or something that would put someone's life in danger. These chains have the ability to cancel all quirks. They offer an absolute defense against any sort of attacks. They are indestructible, and anyone caught by chains has no chance of escaping. I've also never found anything that the spear tips of these chains cannot pierce, Kushina explained.
Alright, that sounds incredible, he agreed. But that only brings me back to the earlier question, why keep it a secret? With the potential of this quirk you could have become a top 10 hero effortlessly.